What if the greatest threat to your health is not something you can feel? Not a sharp pain, not a sudden illness, not even a diagnosis. What if right now a silent fire is burning inside your body, slowly damaging your blood vessels, aging your brain, weakening your immune system, and increasing your risk of heart disease, cancer, and dementia, without causing a single obvious symptom? And what if most people never discover that fire until the damage is already done? In this series, you will learn what chronic inflammation really is, why it has become one of the biggest health challenges of modern life, and most importantly, what science says you can do to turn that fire down. By the end of this journey, you will understand why inflammation may be the missing piece behind fatigue, brain fog, stubborn weight gain, poor sleep, and many of the chronic diseases that affect millions of people today. And if you find value in evidence-based health content like this, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are still a growing channel, and your support genuinely helps us continue creating deeply researched health documentaries like this one. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin. Part 1, the fire nobody feels. Michael was 38 years old. He looked like the kind of person most people would describe as healthy. He ran marathons. He exercised regularly. He never smoked. His blood pressure was normal. His friends admired his discipline. His coworkers joked that he was probably the healthiest person in the office. Then one morning, everything changed. Halfway through a run, Michael felt an unusual pressure in his chest. At first, he ignored it. Athletes often push through discomfort, but within minutes, the pressure became intense. He stopped running. His breathing became difficult. Soon he was in an emergency room. Doctors confirmed something almost nobody expected. Michael had suffered a heart attack. The news shocked everyone. How could this happen? He was not overweight. He was active. He appeared healthy. The story should have ended there. But something puzzled his doctors. Many of the traditional risk factors were missing. His cholesterol numbers were not alarming. His lifestyle seemed reasonable, so they looked deeper. And there they found a clue. His inflammatory markers were elevated, particularly a blood marker called high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, often known as hs-CRP. It suggested something important. For years, Michael's immune system may have been fighting a battle that he never knew existed. Not against an infection, not against an injury, but against a chronic state of low-grade inflammation quietly spreading throughout his body. A hidden fire, one that had been burning for years. The truth is that inflammation itself is not the enemy. In fact, without inflammation, you would not survive. Imagine you accidentally cut your finger while preparing dinner. Within moments, your immune system springs into action. Blood vessels widen, immune cells rush to the scene, chemical messengers coordinate repairs. The area becomes red, warm, swollen, maybe even painful. That is inflammation. And in this situation, inflammation is saving your life. The same thing happens when you catch the flu, or sprain an ankle, or suffer a minor injury. Inflammation is your body's emergency response team. It is the biological equivalent of firefighters rushing toward a burning building. The problem begins when the firefighters never leave. Imagine a fire alarm that keeps ringing day and night. At first, the alarm protects you, but eventually it creates chaos. People become exhausted, resources are wasted, damage accumulates. This is what happens in chronic inflammation. The immune system becomes trapped in a state of constant alert. The body begins reacting as if a threat is always present, even when there is no actual emergency. Scientists sometimes describe this condition as low-grade chronic inflammation. It is not dramatic, it is not obvious, and that is precisely why it is so dangerous. You do not feel flames. You do not see smoke. Yet damage continues quietly beneath the surface. Deep inside your immune system, chemical messengers known as cytokines are constantly communicating. These molecules help immune cells coordinate their actions. Under normal circumstances, cytokines are incredibly useful. They help fight infections, they help repair injuries, they help maintain balance. But when inflammation becomes chronic, certain cytokines begin circulating continuously. Among the most studied are interleukin-6, often called IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, known as TNF-alpha. Think of them as emergency broadcasts that never stop. Instead of activating briefly and then shutting down, they remain switched on, day after day, month after month. year after year. Over time, these signals influence nearly every organ system in the body: the heart, the brain, the liver, the muscles, even the skin. This raises an important question. If chronic inflammation is so widespread, why do so few people recognize it? The answer is simple. Its symptoms often appear ordinary, common, easy to dismiss. Many people experience persistent fatigue and assume they are simply busy. Others struggle with brain fog and blame aging. Some notice stubborn weight gain despite reasonable habits. Others experience mild joint aches, poor sleep, low motivation, skin problems, digestive discomfort. None of these symptoms automatically mean inflammation is present, but together they can form a pattern that millions of people overlook. Have you ever felt tired even after a full night's sleep? Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you were there? Have you ever felt mentally slower than you used to feel? If so, let us know in the comments. Your experience may help someone else realize they are not alone. One of the challenges with chronic inflammation is that it often develops gradually. Human beings adapt remarkably well. When changes occur slowly, we stop noticing them. Energy levels decline little by little. Mental clarity fades little by little. Recovery becomes slower little by little. Until one day, what once felt abnormal becomes your new normal. This is why awareness matters. Not fear, not panic, awareness. Because the earlier we recognize the signs, the more opportunity we have to change course. To help you reflect on your own health, consider the following questions. Do you frequently feel tired during the day? Do you struggle with brain fog? Do you experience unexplained aches and pains? Do you have difficulty losing excess weight? Do you wake up feeling unrested? Do you often feel stressed? Do you consume highly processed foods regularly? Do you spend most of your day sitting? Do you experience digestive discomfort? Do you feel that your overall energy has declined over the past few years? You do not need to keep score right now. The purpose is simply to begin noticing patterns. Because inflammation is not always something that happens suddenly. More often, it develops quietly, patiently, almost invisibly, and that is what makes it such a formidable opponent. The good news is that inflammation is not destiny. Your body is not helpless. Your immune system is not broken. It is responding to signals. And throughout this series, we will explore where those signals come from and how they can be changed. But before we can learn how to extinguish the fire, we need to understand the scale of the damage it can cause. Because if inflammation is merely a collection of immune molecules floating through the bloodstream, how can it contribute to heart attacks, Alzheimer's disease, and even cancer? To answer that question, we must follow the journey of inflammation itself, from the bloodstream to the heart to the brain and beyond. And that is exactly where we're going next. Part 2. The body on fire. In the previous chapter, we discovered something unsettling. A fire can burn inside the human body without pain, without warning, without obvious symptoms. But that revelation leads to a much bigger question. If chronic inflammation is nothing more than chemical signals released by the immune system, how can it contribute to heart attacks? How can it affect memory? How can it influence cancer? How can something invisible become one of the most powerful forces shaping human health? To answer that question, we need to follow the journey of a single inflammatory signal as it travels through the body. Imagine for a moment that we could shrink ourselves down to the microscopic level. We enter the bloodstream. Around us, billions of red blood cells rush through vast biological highways. Nutrients move, hormones move, immune cells move, and among them travels a tiny inflammatory messenger. One molecule, small enough to be invisible, powerful enough to alter the fate of an entire organ. The journey begins in the blood. At first, nothing appears unusual. The inflammatory signal drifts through the circulation, carried by the force of every heartbeat. But unlike oxygen or nutrients, its mission is different. Its purpose is to alert, to activate, to prepare the body for danger. That response is helpful during an infection, helpful during an injury, helpful during a genuine emergency. But what happens when the emergency never ends? The signal keeps traveling. Eventually, it reaches the heart. And this is where one of the greatest misconceptions in modern health begins to unravel. For decades, many people believed that cholesterol alone was responsible for heart disease. The story seemed simple. Cholesterol builds up inside arteries. The arteries become blocked. A heart attack occurs. But reality is far more complex. Think about cholesterol as building material. Building material by itself is not necessarily dangerous. The real problem begins when inflammation enters the picture. Inside the walls of blood vessels, tiny injuries occur every day. High blood sugar, smoking, stress, poor sleep, pollution, all can contribute to microscopic damage. The immune system notices these injuries. Inflammatory cells rush to the scene. At first, they are trying to help, but when inflammation becomes chronic, the repair process becomes chaotic. Immune cells begin swallowing damaged cholesterol particles. These cells eventually transform into what scientists call foam cells. Over time, clusters of foam cells accumulate. Layers form. The artery wall thickens. A plaque begins to grow. For years, this plaque may remain unnoticed. No symptoms, no pain, no warning. Then one day, the inflammatory process weakens the protective cap covering the plaque. The surface becomes fragile. A rupture occurs. Within seconds, the body interprets the rupture as an emergency injury. Blood clotting mechanisms activate. A clot forms. If the clot blocks blood flow to the heart, a heart attack occurs. If it blocks blood flow to the brain, a stroke occurs. Suddenly, the silent fire becomes a life-threatening event. This is why many researchers now view inflammation as one of the central drivers of cardiovascular disease. The plaque is only part of the story. The fire inside the plaque may be even more important. But the inflammatory molecule does not stop at the heart. It continues its journey, flowing through arteries that lead directly to the most complex structure in the known universe, the human brain. For many years, scientists believed the brain was largely protected from immune activity. Today, we know the relationship is far more intimate. The brain possesses its own immune guardians known as microglia. These cells constantly patrol the nervous system. They remove debris, destroy damaged tissue, and help maintain order. Under healthy conditions, microglia are essential, but chronic inflammation changes their behavior. Imagine security guards who never receive an all-clear signal. Eventually, they become overly aggressive, hypervigilant, unable to distinguish genuine threats from harmless activity. As inflammatory signals continue entering the brain, microglia can become chronically activated. This state is known as neuroinflammation, and neuroinflammation has become one of the most important areas of Alzheimer's research. One of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease is the accumulation of beta-amyloid proteins. These proteins can form sticky plaques between neurons. The presence of beta-amyloid appears to trigger immune responses. Microglia become activated. Inflammatory chemicals increase. Damage spreads. The result is a vicious cycle. More inflammation, more damage, more inflammation. Over time, communication between neurons becomes impaired. Memory begins to suffer. Cognitive function declines. The person may not notice anything at first. Perhaps names become harder to remember. Perhaps focus becomes more difficult. Perhaps mental clarity fades. Many people simply assume this is normal aging. But researchers increasingly suspect that chronic inflammation may be one of the hidden forces accelerating brain aging. Let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced brain fog? Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went there? Have you ever struggled to focus after a poor night's sleep? Share your experience in the comments. You may be surprised by how many others have experienced the same thing. Now our inflammatory messenger continues onward, beyond the brain, beyond the heart, into tissues throughout the body. Eventually, it reaches another critical destination, the cellular environment itself. And here we encounter one of the most feared diseases in human history, cancer. Cancer is incredibly complex. There is no single cause, no single pathway, no simple explanation, but chronic inflammation appears to create conditions that cancer cells find favorable. Think of inflammation as biological friction. Wherever inflammation persists, cells experience stress. One major source of this stress comes from molecules known as free radicals. These highly reactive molecules can damage proteins, damage cell membranes, and damage DNA itself. This process is known as oxidative stress. DNA contains the instructions that govern every cell. When DNA becomes damaged repeatedly, errors can accumulate. Most of the time, the body repairs these errors. Sometimes damaged cells self-destruct, but occasionally a mutation survives. Then another. Over years or decades, those mutations can contribute to the development of cancer. Inflammation does not necessarily create cancer by itself, but it can create an environment where abnormal cells are more likely to survive and expand. It is like providing dry wood to an already dangerous fire. This is one reason why chronic inflammation has been linked to numerous forms of cancer. The same inflammatory signals affecting blood vessels and brain tissue may also influence cellular behavior throughout the body. Which brings us to an important question. If inflammation is so influential, how do we know whether it is present? After all, you cannot feel most inflammatory molecules moving through your bloodstream. You cannot see them, you cannot hear them. Fortunately, modern medicine provides clues. One of the most useful is a blood marker known as high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, often abbreviated as hsCRP. Think of hsCRP as smoke detected by a fire alarm. It does not tell you exactly where the fire is located. It does not reveal the precise cause. But it tells you something important. Inflammation may be present somewhere in the body. Generally speaking, lower values are associated with lower levels of systemic inflammation. Higher values suggest increased inflammatory activity. Many physicians use hsCRP as part of cardiovascular risk assessment because elevated levels have been associated with increased risk of heart disease and stroke. It is not a perfect test. No single biomarker is, but it provides valuable information, especially when combined with other markers and clinical evaluation. For many people, learning about hsCRP becomes a turning point. Because for the first time, the invisible becomes measurable. The hidden fire leaves evidence, and evidence creates awareness. Yet even hsCRP raises another mystery. Inflammation travels throughout the body. It affects the heart, the brain, the arteries, the cells. But where does it begin? Who is sending the signals? Who is coordinating this vast network of immune activity? Who is acting as the command center behind the scenes? Because if inflammation is moving everywhere, then something must be helping direct the entire system. And that something may be living much closer than most people realize. Not in the heart, not in the brain, but deep inside the digestive tract, in the hidden ecosystem of the human gut. And that is where our journey continues next. Part 3, the Gut Command Center. In the previous chapter, we followed inflammation through the body. We watched it travel through blood vessels. We saw how it could contribute to heart disease, how it could influence the aging brain, how it could help create conditions that allow cancer to thrive. But a question remained unanswered. Who is directing all of this? Who is sending the signals? Who is influencing the immune system day after day, year after year? The answer may surprise you. Because one of the most powerful control centers in your entire body is not located inside your skull. It is not your brain. It is not your heart. It is not your liver. It is your gut. The digestive tract may look nothing more than a long tube responsible for processing food. But modern science has revealed something extraordinary. The gut is one of the most important command centers of the immune system. In fact, scientists estimate that roughly 70% of the body's immune cells are located in and around the digestive tract. Think about that for a moment. Most people spend their lives believing the immune system exists mainly in the blood, or the lymph nodes, or perhaps the bone marrow. Yet the majority of immune activity occurs around the place where the outside world enters the body every single day, the gut. And when you think about it, this makes perfect sense. Every meal introduces thousands of foreign compounds. Every sip of water contains molecules from the environment. Every day, your digestive system encounters bacteria, viruses, toxins, allergens, and countless substances your body must evaluate. The gut sits directly at the border between you and the outside world, which means it must constantly decide what gets in and what stays out. Imagine a country protecting its borders. At every checkpoint, trained officers inspect travelers. Some are welcomed inside, others are turned away. Potential threats receive special attention. Your gut operates in a remarkably similar way. The intestinal lining functions as one of the most sophisticated security systems in nature. Despite stretching across an enormous surface area, this barrier is astonishingly thin. In many places, it is only a single cell layer thick, one cell. That is all that separates the contents of your digestive tract from your bloodstream. If that sounds fragile, it is. which is why the body has developed extraordinary protective mechanisms. One of the most important is a structure known as tight junctions. Think of tight junctions as microscopic gatekeepers. They connect neighboring intestinal cells together. When functioning properly, they create a highly selective barrier. Beneficial nutrients pass through. Dangerous substances remain outside. It is a little like airport security. Passengers with proper authorization proceed. Potential threats are stopped. For most of human history, this system worked remarkably well. But there is another layer of complexity. Because the gut is not simply a wall, it is also home to an entire ecosystem, a living world that scientists now call the microbiome. Inside your digestive tract live trillions of microorganisms. Not hundreds, not thousands, trillions. These organisms include bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microscopic life forms. Together, they form one of the most densely populated ecosystems on Earth. The number is so vast that microbial cells living in and on your body rival the number of your own cells. You are not just human. In many ways, you are an ecosystem. And these microbes are not passive passengers. They actively shape your health. Some produce vitamins, some help digest food, some communicate directly with immune cells, some even help regulate inflammation. When beneficial bacteria thrive, they help maintain balance. They support the intestinal barrier. They produce compounds that calm immune activity. They strengthen communication between the gut and the brain. They act as allies. But not every microbe behaves like a loyal ally. Certain organisms can become problematic when conditions change. Poor diet, chronic stress, lack of sleep, excessive alcohol, certain medications, environmental toxins, all can disrupt the balance of the microbiome. Scientists often refer to this imbalance as dysbiosis. When dysbiosis develops, beneficial species decline, less desirable species may begin to dominate. The ecosystem becomes unstable, the allies become weaker, the troublemakers become stronger. And when that happens, inflammation often follows. This brings us to one of the most controversial and fascinating concepts in modern health science: leaky gut. The term may sound dramatic, but the underlying idea is relatively simple. Remember those tight junctions we discussed earlier? Under healthy conditions, they remain tightly regulated. But various stressors can weaken their function. When this occurs, the intestinal barrier becomes more permeable. Tiny gaps begin to appear. Substances that would normally remain inside the digestive tract may now cross into the bloodstream. One of the most studied examples involves lipopolysaccharides, often abbreviated as LPS. LPS molecules are components of certain bacterial cell walls. Inside the gut, they are generally contained. But if they enter circulation, the immune system recognizes them as a warning signal. The response can be significant. Inflammatory pathways activate. Immune cells become alert. Cytokines begin circulating. The body behaves as though it has encountered a threat, not because a dangerous infection is necessarily present, but because biological debris has entered places where it does not belong. Over time, repeated exposure may contribute to systemic inflammation. The fire spreads beyond the gut, beyond digestion, beyond the intestines, and into the entire body. But perhaps the most surprising discovery of all involves the connection between the gut and the brain. For centuries, people sensed that emotions and digestion were linked. We still use expressions like gut feeling, or butterflies in the stomach, or trust your gut. Today, science is revealing that these expressions may contain more truth than we once imagined. Researchers now speak of something called the gut-brain axis. This is a communication network connecting the digestive system and the nervous system. Messages travel in both directions. The brain influences the gut influences the brain, and the communication never stops. Every moment of every day. Gut microbes help produce neurotransmitters and signaling molecules that influence mood, cognition, and behavior. Inflammation within the gut may influence inflammation within the brain. And this may help explain why digestive issues are often associated with symptoms such as brain fog, difficulty concentrating, low mood, anxiety, even depression. Have you ever experienced a period where your digestion felt off and your mental clarity seemed to disappear at the same time? If so, share your experience in the comments. Many people are surprised when they realize how closely these systems are connected. The exciting news is that the microbiome is highly responsive. Unlike your genes, which change very slowly, the microbiome can begin shifting within days. Small choices matter. This brings us to a simple framework, the 3G rule. Greens, grains, gut-friendly foods. Greens provide fiber, polyphenols, and nutrients that beneficial microbes love. Grains, especially minimally processed varieties, provide additional fiber that feeds healthy bacteria. And gut-friendly foods such as yogurt, kefir, fermented vegetables, and other traditionally fermented foods may help support microbial diversity. The goal is not perfection. The goal is creating an environment where beneficial microbes can thrive. Because when the right microbes flourish, the gut barrier becomes stronger. Inflammation often becomes quieter, and communication between the gut and the immune system improves. Yet despite the remarkable intelligence of this system, a troubling reality remains. Every single day, millions of people unknowingly attack their own gut ecosystem. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but through habits that have become normalized in modern life. Which raises the next question in our investigation. If the gut is the command center, who is sabotaging the command center every day? Who is feeding inflammation from breakfast until bedtime? Who is turning a healthy microbiome into a battlefield? The answer may be sitting in your kitchen right now. And it begins with the modern food environment itself. That is where our journey continues next. Part 4, the American Food Trap. In the last chapter, we discovered something extraordinary. The gut is not just a digestive organ. It is a command center, a border security system, a communication hub connecting the immune system, the brain, and the rest of the body. We learned that when the gut barrier becomes compromised, inflammatory signals can spread throughout the body. But that raises an important question. What is attacking this command center every day? Why has chronic inflammation become so common in the modern world? Why do millions of people struggle with fatigue, metabolic dysfunction, digestive problems, and low-grade inflammation despite having access to more food than any previous generation? To answer that question, we need to look beyond biology. We need to look at history, specifically the history of food. Imagine walking into an American grocery store in the early 1970s. You would still recognize most of the food. Fresh produce, eggs, meat, milk, simple ingredients. Packaged foods certainly existed, but they occupied a much smaller portion of the average diet. Now compare that with a modern supermarket. Entire aisles are filled with products that did not exist a few generations ago. Colorful packages, long ingredient lists, foods engineered to maximize shelf life, flavor, convenience, and repeat purchases. Beginning in the 1980s, the food landscape began changing dramatically. Advances in food manufacturing made it possible to create products that were cheap to produce, highly profitable, and extremely appealing to consumers. Convenience became king. Preparation time disappeared. Food became available everywhere, at gas stations, airports, office buildings, schools, vending machines, drive-through windows. And while this transformation made life easier in many ways, it also introduced a new challenge, the rise of ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods are not simply foods that have been cooked or packaged. They are industrial formulations created using ingredients rarely found in a traditional kitchen. Flavor enhancers, artificial colors, refined starches, added sugars, industrial oils, emulsifiers, preservatives. These products are designed to be hyperpalatable. In other words, they are designed to make you want more and more and more. The problem is not necessarily a single ingredient. The problem is the combination. Many ultra-processed foods deliver large amounts of calories while providing relatively little fiber, few micronutrients, and limited satiety. As a result, people often consume far more energy than their bodies need. At the same time, the microbiome receives less of the nourishment it evolved to expect. The immune system notices, the gut notices, inflammation notices. One of the most influential ingredients in this story is something known as high fructose corn syrup, often abbreviated as HFCS. For decades, high fructose corn syrup became one of the dominant sweeteners in processed foods and beverages throughout the United States. It was inexpensive, easy to use, and incredibly versatile. Soft drinks, breakfast cereals, desserts, sauces, snack foods, many contain significant amounts of added sweeteners. Now, it is important to understand something. The human body can handle sugar. The problem is not that sugar is inherently poisonous. The problem is dose, frequency, and context. Historically, sweet foods were relatively rare. Today, many people consume sweetened products from morning until bedtime. Breakfast begins with sugar. Lunch includes sugar. Snacks contain sugar. Drinks contain sugar. Dessert contains even more sugar. The result is a constant stream of metabolic stress. And that stress can influence inflammation throughout the body. But sugar is only one part of the story. The next major character is less obvious and far more controversial: seed oils. Over the past several decades, industrial seed oils became deeply embedded in the food supply. Soybean oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, canola oil, sunflower oil. These oils are inexpensive, stable, and widely used in processed foods and restaurant cooking. Today, soybean oil alone represents one of the most common sources of dietary fat in the United States. The debate surrounding seed oils has become one of the most heated topics in nutrition, and it is important to approach the subject carefully. Not every expert agrees on the magnitude of their impact. However, many researchers focus on one key issue: the balance between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. Throughout much of human history, these fats existed in a relatively balanced relationship. Modern diets have dramatically shifted that balance. Omega-6 intake has increased substantially. Omega-3 intake often remains low. Why does this matter? Because omega-6 fatty acids can be converted into compounds involved in inflammatory signaling. One important molecule in this pathway is arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid itself is not evil. The body needs it. It plays important roles in immunity and healing. The problem arises when inflammatory signaling becomes excessive and chronic. Imagine a fire department with an unlimited budget and no off switch. Eventually, emergency responses begin occurring everywhere, even when no real emergency exists. This is one reason many scientists believe that maintaining a healthier balance between omega-6 and omega-3 fats may be important for long-term metabolic health. Now let us return to sugar, because many people believe they can easily avoid it. After all, they rarely eat candy. They do not drink soda every day. Surely their sugar intake must be low, but then they start reading labels, and something surprising happens. They discover sugar hiding everywhere. Food manufacturers have become remarkably creative. Sugar may appear under dozens of different names: cane sugar, brown rice syrup, malt syrup, corn syrup, dextrose, fructose, maltose, glucose, fruit juice concentrate, agave syrup, honey powder, coconut sugar, and many more. Different names, same biological reality. The challenge is not that consumers are careless. The challenge is that modern food labels often require detective work. Let me ask you something. Have you ever picked up a product that looked healthy, only to discover a long list of ingredients you could barely pronounce? Tell us in the comments. Many people have experienced that exact moment. And once you start looking, it becomes difficult to ignore. Fortunately, learning to read food labels is not complicated. You do not need a degree in nutrition. You simply need a few practical rules. First, look at the ingredient list. Ingredients are listed in descending order by weight. If sugar appears near the top, pay attention. Second, count the ingredients. Generally speaking, shorter lists are often easier to understand. Third, look for recognizable foods. Can you imagine the ingredient existing in a traditional kitchen? Or does it sound like something developed in an industrial laboratory? Fourth, pay attention to added sugars. Many products marketed as healthy contain surprisingly large amounts. And finally, remember that marketing language is not the same as biology. Natural, wholesome, low-fat, heart-healthy, made with real fruit. These phrases can be useful, but they do not replace reading the actual label. Because ultimately, the immune system does not respond to advertising. The gut does not respond to packaging. The body responds to what enters the bloodstream, day after day, meal after meal, year after year. This is why food matters so much. Not because one meal determines your fate, not because perfection is required, but because chronic inflammation is often fueled by repeated exposure to small signals, tiny decisions repeated thousands of times. And yet, despite everything we have discussed, food is not acting alone. There is another force that appears after nearly every meal, a force that many experts now consider one of the most important drivers of inflammation, aging, and metabolic disease. It rises, it falls, and it shapes the biology of nearly every cell in your body. Food may provide the fuel, but this invisible force often determines how intensely the fire burns. And that force is blood sugar. That is where our investigation continues next. Part 5. The Glucose Disaster. Imagine waking up on an ordinary weekday. Nothing unusual, no birthday celebration, no holiday feast, no all-you-can-eat buffet, just a completely normal day in the life of a modern office worker. The alarm rings. You feel slightly tired despite getting what seemed like enough sleep. There is no time for a proper breakfast. A flavored coffee and a pastry seem convenient. Maybe a muffin, maybe a bagel, maybe a breakfast sandwich with a sweetened drink. Within minutes, something fascinating begins happening inside the body. The carbohydrates from that meal are broken down into glucose. Glucose enters the bloodstream. Blood sugar rises. The pancreas immediately notices. Insulin is released. Cells begin absorbing glucose. Everything appears normal. Everything appears under control. But this is only the beginning. By mid-morning, energy starts to fade. Concentration weakens. Someone brings donuts to the office. A small snack seems harmless. After all, it is just one donut. Yet another wave of glucose enters the bloodstream. Another spike, another insulin response, another ride on the metabolic roller coaster. Lunch arrives, a sandwich, potato chips, a soft drink, perhaps a cookie. Again, blood glucose rises rapidly. Again, insulin responds. Again, the cycle repeats. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, fatigue returns. The brain wants fuel. Cravings begin. A sweet coffee drink sounds appealing. Maybe a snack bar. Maybe candy from the office bowl. And before the workday is over, yet another glucose surge floods the bloodstream. Dinner finally arrives. Pasta, pizza, rice, takeout after a long day, a dessert while watching television, then bed. And tomorrow, the entire process begins again. This pattern has become so common that most people view it as normal. But if we could zoom inside the body and observe every metabolic event, the picture would look very different. We would see a series of dramatic rises and falls, sharp peaks, sharp drops, repeated over and over again. This phenomenon is known as a glucose spike. A glucose spike occurs when blood sugar rises rapidly after eating. The body is designed to handle glucose. Glucose itself is not the enemy. In fact, glucose is one of the body's primary energy sources. The brain depends on it. Muscles use it. Every cell requires energy. The problem is not glucose. The problem is excess. The problem is frequency. The problem is spending years riding a metabolic roller coaster that never stops. Imagine driving a car. Smooth acceleration causes little wear, but repeatedly slamming the accelerator to the floor and then hitting the brakes creates stress on every component. Something similar happens inside the body during repeated glucose spikes. Each spike demands an insulin response. Each spike challenges metabolic stability. Each spike places additional pressure on systems that evolved for a very different environment. Thousands of years ago, food was not available 24 hours a day. Humans experienced periods of abundance and scarcity. Today, highly processed carbohydrates are available almost everywhere. The body is receiving signals it was never designed to encounter continuously, and eventually cells begin to adapt. At first, insulin works efficiently. The hormone acts like a key. It unlocks cells and allows glucose to enter. Energy is delivered. Balance is restored. But when insulin levels remain elevated for years, some cells begin responding less effectively. It is as if the cells stop listening. The pancreas compensates by producing more insulin, then even more, and eventually more again. This condition is known as insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is one of the most important metabolic problems of modern life, and yet many people do not know they have it. Why? Because it can remain hidden for years. Blood sugar may still appear normal. Routine checkups may not reveal anything alarming. Meanwhile, deeper changes are already underway. Fatigue becomes more common. Energy crashes become more frequent. Weight gain becomes easier. Weight loss becomes harder. Cravings intensify. Inflammation increases. The body slowly moves away from metabolic flexibility and toward dysfunction. Insulin resistance is not merely a blood sugar problem. It is deeply connected to chronic inflammation. Inflammatory signals interfere with insulin signaling. At the same time, insulin resistance promotes more inflammation. The two conditions feed each other. One strengthens the other, and together, they create a vicious cycle. But the story becomes even more concerning when we examine what excess glucose does at the molecular level. Imagine leaving a piece of bread inside a toaster for too long. The surface begins to brown. Heat changes its structure. A similar process occurs within the human body. When excess glucose circulates in the bloodstream, some of it begins attaching itself to proteins and fats. This process is called glycation. The compounds formed during glycation are known as advanced glycation end products. Scientists call them AGEs. The name is fitting because these molecules are closely linked to aging. Think of AGEs as microscopic damage accumulating throughout the body. Proteins become less flexible, tissues become stiffer, repair processes become less efficient. The body gradually loses some of its resilience. Collagen in the skin becomes more rigid, wrinkles become more pronounced, tendons become less elastic, joints become less forgiving. But perhaps the greatest concern lies within the cardiovascular system. Blood vessels are lined with delicate cells known as endothelial cells. These cells play a crucial role in regulating blood flow, inflammation, and vascular health. Healthy endothelial cells create smooth, flexible blood vessels. Damaged endothelial cells create problems. Repeated glucose spikes can contribute to oxidative stress. Oxidative stress can damage endothelial cells. AGEs can further accelerate the process. Inflammation increases, the vessel wall becomes irritated, repair mechanisms become activated, and over time, conditions become favorable for plaque development. This is one reason why elevated blood sugar is strongly associated with cardiovascular disease. The damage does not occur overnight, it develops slowly, quietly, often over decades. A person may feel perfectly healthy while microscopic injuries accumulate inside blood vessels. Then one day, the consequences appear. The tragedy is that many people never connect the outcome to the habits that contributed to it years earlier. The encouraging news is that blood sugar control is one of the most responsive aspects of human health. Small changes can produce surprisingly powerful results. One of the simplest strategies involves changing the order in which food is consumed. Most people focus exclusively on what they eat. Far fewer people consider how they eat. Research suggests that meal sequence can influence glucose responses. A practical approach is surprisingly simple. Begin with vegetables, continue with protein, finish with starches, greens first, protein second, carbohydrates last. Why does this matter? Fiber from vegetables slows digestion. Protein further moderates glucose absorption. As a result, starches entering later often produce a smaller glucose spike. Think of it as creating a speed limit for incoming fuel. Instead of releasing glucose into the bloodstream all at once, the body receives it more gradually. The result is greater stability, fewer energy crashes, less hunger, lower insulin demand, better metabolic control. Many people notice benefits within days. More stable energy, fewer cravings, improved focus, better appetite regulation. Have you ever noticed feeling dramatically different depending on what you eat for breakfast? Have you ever experienced a huge afternoon energy crash after a high carbohydrate lunch? Share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone else recognize a pattern in their own life. As we continue this journey, one thing becomes increasingly clear. Food matters. Blood sugar matters. Insulin matters. But even if you master all of them, even if your meals are perfectly balanced, even if your glucose remains remarkably stable, there is still another force capable of pouring fuel onto the inflammatory fire. A force that follows people into offices, into traffic jams, into financial worries, into social media feeds, into family conflicts, and sometimes even into their dreams. It has no calories, no nutrition label, no ingredient list, yet it may be one of the most powerful drivers of chronic inflammation in the modern world. That force is stress, and that is where our investigation continues next. Part 6, the cortisol trap. In the previous chapter, we uncovered the hidden damage caused by unstable blood sugar. We followed glucose spikes through the bloodstream. We watched insulin resistance slowly develop. We saw how excess glucose could damage blood vessels and contribute to chronic inflammation. But there is another force that can ignite inflammation even when food is under control. A force that follows people everywhere. Into offices, into traffic, into family conflicts, into financial worries, and even into bed at night. You cannot see it. You cannot touch it. Yet it changes your biology every single day. That force is stress. And to understand why chronic inflammation has become so common, we must first understand the culture that surrounds modern stress, especially in America. For decades, a powerful idea has shaped modern life. Work harder, sleep less, push further, stay productive, always be available, always be connected, always be improving. This mindset became so widespread that it earned a name: hustle culture. At first glance, hustle culture appears admirable: ambition, discipline, determination, success. Who would argue against these qualities? The problem is not ambition itself. The problem is when the body never receives a signal that the battle is over. Imagine a soldier who remains on a battlefield for years without rest. Eventually, exhaustion replaces performance. The human stress response works in a remarkably similar way, and at the center of that response is a hormone called cortisol. Today, cortisol has a terrible reputation. Many people hear the word and immediately think of weight gain, anxiety, and burnout. But cortisol is not the villain. In fact, cortisol is one of the reasons our ancestors survived. Imagine you are walking through a forest thousands of years ago. Suddenly, a predator appears. Your brain instantly recognizes danger. Within seconds, stress hormones flood your bloodstream. Heart rate increases. Blood pressure rises. Energy is mobilized. Attention sharpens. Muscles prepare for action. This response can save your life. Without cortisol, humans would struggle to survive emergencies. Cortisol is not designed to hurt you. It is designed to protect you. The problem arises when the emergency never ends. Because the human body evolved for short bursts of stress, not 24-hour exposure, not endless notifications, not financial anxiety, not constant news alerts, not social media comparisons, not years of chronic psychological pressure. When cortisol is released appropriately, it performs another important function. It helps control inflammation. This surprises many people. Most assume stress always increases inflammation. The reality is more complicated. Under normal circumstances, cortisol acts like a brake pedal for the immune system. When inflammation begins rising, cortisol helps calm the response. It tells immune cells to slow down. It prevents excessive damage. It restores balance. Think back to our fire analogy. Inflammation is the fire. Cortisol is part of the fire suppression system. When everything functions properly, the two systems remain balanced. The immune system responds to threats. Cortisol prevents overreaction. The fire burns only when necessary. Then it goes out. But what happens when stress becomes chronic? What happens when cortisol floods the system day after day, month after month, year after year? Something remarkable begins to occur. Cells start ignoring the signal. Scientists call this glucocorticoid resistance. You can think of it like living next to railroad tracks. At first, every passing train feels loud. Eventually, your brain adapts. You barely notice the sound. A similar process can occur with cortisol. Immune cells become less responsive to its message. The brake pedal stops working effectively. Cortisol remains present, but the immune system no longer listens as carefully. The result is dangerous. Inflammation becomes harder to control. The body enters a state where stress and inflammation begin amplifying one another. More stress, more inflammation, more stress. The cycle feeds itself. And modern life provides endless fuel. One of the largest sources of stress today is financial pressure. Studies consistently show that financial concerns rank among the most common chronic stressors. Imagine checking your bank account, worrying about rent, mortgage payments, medical bills, student loans, unexpected expenses. The brain does not always distinguish between physical threats and psychological threats. To your nervous system, uncertainty itself can feel dangerous. As a result, stress pathways remain activated, even while sitting safely at home, even while watching television, even while trying to relax. The body remains vigilant, always waiting, always preparing, always scanning for danger. And then there is social media, a stressor unlike anything our ancestors ever experienced. Thousands of years ago, humans compared themselves to perhaps a few dozen people within a tribe. Today, a person can compare themselves to millions, every day, every hour, every minute. Someone has a better career, a better house, a better relationship, a better body, a better vacation. At least that is what the screen suggests. The brain interprets these comparisons in subtle but powerful ways. Feelings of inadequacy increase, anxiety increases, stress increases, and inflammation may increase right alongside them. Researchers have even observed associations between heavy social media use and increased symptoms of depression, anxiety, and psychological distress. Of course, social media itself is not inherently harmful. It can educate, connect, inspire. But when it becomes a constant source of comparison and overstimulation, the stress response may never fully disengage. Let me ask you something. What causes the most stress in your life right now? Work, money, health concerns, family responsibilities, or perhaps constant digital overload? Share your thoughts in the comments. You may discover that many others are facing similar challenges. The good news is that the nervous system is trainable. Just as chronic stress can condition the body toward inflammation, certain practices can help restore balance. One of the simplest and most effective techniques is known as box breathing. This method has been used by athletes, military personnel, first responders, and meditation practitioners. Its power comes from its simplicity. Imagine drawing a square. The first side, inhale slowly through the nose. The second side, hold the breath gently. The third side, exhale slowly. The fourth side, pause again, then repeat. A common pattern is 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. The exact timing is less important than the rhythm, because the goal is not oxygen. The goal is communication. You are sending a message to the nervous system. The danger has passed. The threat is over. You can relax now. When practiced consistently, controlled breathing may help reduce sympathetic nervous system activation and encourage greater parasympathetic activity. In simpler terms, it helps shift the body away from fight or flight mode and toward recovery mode, toward healing, toward balance, toward a quieter immune system. Because ultimately, chronic inflammation is not only about what you eat, it is also about the signals your body receives every day. Signals of danger, signals of safety, signals that determine whether the fire continues burning or finally begins to fade. But this raises another question. If stress keeps the fire burning throughout the day, what happens when night arrives? What happens when you close your eyes? What happens when the body is supposed to repair itself? And what happens when sleep itself becomes disrupted? Because one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory systems in the human body only activates after dark, and millions of people are unknowingly sabotaging it every single night. That is where our journey continues next. Part 7, Midnight Inflammation. In the previous chapter, we discovered how chronic stress can quietly fuel inflammation. We learned that cortisol is not the enemy. In fact, cortisol is one of the body's most important survival tools. The problem begins when the stress response never turns off, when the alarm keeps ringing, when the nervous system remains trapped in a state of vigilance. But there is another system designed to restore balance, a system so powerful that it influences immunity, metabolism, memory, hormone production, and inflammation all at once. And every night, millions of people unknowingly sabotage it. That system is sleep. For most of human history, sleep was not viewed as optional. It was a biological necessity. Today, many people treat sleep as an inconvenience, something to sacrifice, something to squeeze between work, entertainment, and endless digital distractions. In America, average sleep duration has steadily declined over the past several decades. Millions of adults regularly sleep less than the recommended amount. Many proudly describe themselves as functioning on 5 or 6 hours a night, as if exhaustion were a badge of honor. But biology does not negotiate. The body keeps score. And one of the first consequences of inadequate sleep is increased inflammation. Studies consistently show that even a few nights of restricted sleep can increase inflammatory markers in the bloodstream. The immune system becomes more reactive. Stress hormones become less regulated. Metabolic function begins to suffer. The fire starts growing stronger. Yet most people never connect these symptoms to sleep. They notice fatigue, brain fog, weight gain, poor concentration, mood changes, but they rarely suspect that inflammation may be rising quietly in the background. One of the biggest reasons modern sleep has deteriorated is something our ancestors never encountered: artificial light, more specifically, blue light. Imagine standing around a campfire thousands of years ago. As the sun disappeared, darkness gradually arrived. The brain received a clear message: night is coming, prepare for sleep. Today, darkness rarely arrives. Smartphones glow, televisions glow, tablets glow, laptops glow, even bedroom clocks glow. The human brain evolved under the rhythm of sunrise and sunset. Now it is exposed to daylight-like stimulation long after sunset. The result is confusion. And the hormone most affected by this confusion is melatonin. Many people think melatonin is a sleep hormone. That is only partially true. Melatonin is actually a timing hormone. Its primary job is to tell the body that darkness has arrived. As evening approaches, melatonin levels naturally rise. Body temperature gradually decreases. Alertness declines. The nervous system begins preparing for rest, but blue light interferes with this process. When bright screens shine into the eyes at night, the brain receives conflicting information. The message becomes, stay awake, stay alert. It is still daytime. As a result, melatonin production can be delayed, sleep arrives later, sleep quality declines, and recovery suffers. This creates a problem that goes far beyond feeling tired the next morning. Because not all sleep is created equal. The body cycles through different stages of sleep throughout the night. Some stages are lighter, some are deeper, and one of the most important is deep sleep. Deep sleep is where much of the body's restoration occurs. Growth hormone increases, cellular repair accelerates, immune regulation improves, tissues recover from the stress of the day. Imagine a city performing maintenance, road repairs, electrical upgrades, waste removal, infrastructure inspections. Most of that work happens at night when traffic is minimal. Deep sleep functions in a similar way. It is the maintenance shift of the human body. Without enough deep sleep, repair processes begin falling behind. And nowhere is this more important than in the brain. For decades, scientists believed the brain lacked a dedicated waste removal system. Then a remarkable discovery changed everything. Researchers identified what is now known as the glymphatic system. Think of it as the brain's cleaning crew. Throughout the day, brain cells generate waste products, proteins accumulate, metabolic byproducts build up, inflammatory compounds appear. These materials must be removed. The glymphatic system becomes dramatically more active during deep sleep. Cerebrospinal fluid begins flowing through brain tissue. Waste products are flushed away. Damaged proteins are cleared. The brain essentially performs overnight housekeeping. One of the substances removed through this process is beta amyloid. You may remember this protein from our discussion about Alzheimer's disease. When clearance systems become less efficient, beta amyloid may accumulate over time. This is one reason sleep has become such an important topic in longevity research. The sleeping brain is not inactive. It is incredibly busy. Now imagine what happens around 2 o'clock in the morning. A healthy sleeper is cycling through critical stages of restoration. Hormones are being regulated, immune activity is being calibrated, memories are being consolidated, waste is being removed, inflammatory signals are being balanced. The body is doing some of its most important work. But what happens when someone is still awake? Scrolling social media, watching videos, answering emails, playing games, or simply lying awake under bright lights. The maintenance shift gets interrupted. The cleanup crew cannot work efficiently. The repair schedule falls behind. Night after night, month after month, year after year. Eventually, the consequences become visible. More inflammation, less resilience, slower recovery, accelerated aging, poor metabolic health. This is why sleep may be one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory tools available. And unlike many expensive interventions, it costs nothing. The challenge is creating an environment that supports it. This brings us to what many sleep researchers call a sleep sanctuary, a dedicated environment designed to maximize sleep quality. Think of your bedroom as a recovery chamber, a place where biology can operate exactly as intended. Several simple adjustments can make a significant difference. Keep the room cool. Many sleep experts recommend temperatures around 65 degrees Fahrenheit or approximately 18 degrees Celsius. Reduce light exposure. Even small amounts of light can interfere with sleep quality. Limit screen use before bedtime. Give the brain time to transition into nighttime mode. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule whenever possible. The body loves rhythm. And perhaps most importantly, reserve the bedroom primarily for sleep and recovery. You want your brain to associate that space with rest. Not work, not stress, not endless scrolling. Let me ask you something. What is the biggest obstacle preventing you from getting great sleep? Late night screen time? Stress? Shift work? Children? A busy schedule? Share your answer in the comments. You may be surprised by how many others struggle with the same challenge. Because sleep is not laziness, it is not wasted time. It is one of the most sophisticated recovery systems ever developed by nature. Every night, your body attempts to extinguish the inflammatory fires that accumulated throughout the day. Every night, it tries to repair damage, restore balance, and prepare you for tomorrow. But as powerful as sleep is, it cannot solve every problem. Because even if you sleep perfectly, even if your bedroom becomes a true sleep sanctuary, even if your brain receives all the deep sleep it needs, you are still being exposed to something else, something invisible, something you drink, something you breathe, something that surrounds modern life. Tiny triggers capable of activating inflammation without your awareness. And that is where our investigation continues next. The Invisible Invasion of Environmental Toxins, Part 8. The Toxic Invasion. So far in our journey, we have uncovered many of the hidden drivers of chronic inflammation. We explored the gut, we examined processed food, we followed blood sugar spikes through the bloodstream, we exposed the effects of chronic stress. We discovered how poor sleep can quietly fuel inflammation night after night. But there is another source of inflammatory pressure that many people never think about. It does not come from what we choose to eat. It does not come from a lack of discipline. It does not come from poor motivation. Instead, it comes from the modern environment itself. Invisible substances that surround us every day. Substances we drink, breathe, touch, and absorb. Most people imagine toxins as something dramatic. Industrial accidents, contaminated waste sites, dangerous chemicals with warning labels. But many modern exposures are far more subtle. They arrive in tiny amounts, repeated thousands of times, over years and decades. And one of the most discussed examples today is a group of compounds known as PFAS. PFAS stands for perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Scientists sometimes call them forever chemicals. That nickname exists for a reason. These compounds are extraordinarily resistant to breakdown. They can remain in the environment for years, sometimes decades, sometimes longer. PFAS became popular because they are useful. They resist water, they resist grease, they resist stains. Manufacturers incorporated them into countless products: nonstick cookware, food packaging, water-resistant clothing, carpets, furniture, and many other everyday items. The problem is that usefulness and biological safety are not always the same thing. Researchers have increasingly studied potential links between PFAS exposure and immune system changes, metabolic disturbances, and other health concerns. What worries many scientists is not necessarily a single exposure. It is continuous exposure, a little today, a little tomorrow, a little next year, and eventually a measurable accumulation inside the body. PFAS are not the only concern. Another invisible guest has quietly entered modern life. Microplastics. Imagine a plastic bottle left in the sun. Over time, it begins breaking into smaller and smaller pieces, not disappearing, simply fragmenting. Eventually, some particles become so tiny they are nearly invisible. These are microplastics. Researchers have detected microplastics in oceans, rivers, food, drinking water, air, and even inside the human body. Think about that for a moment. The same material used to manufacture countless consumer products may now be circulating through biological systems that evolved long before plastic existed. Scientists are still investigating the long-term consequences. Many important questions remain unanswered, but concerns continue growing because chronic exposure may contribute to oxidative stress and inflammatory responses. Once again, we encounter the same theme. The immune system notices things that do not belong. And when the immune system notices something unusual, inflammation often follows. Then there is BPA, bisphenol A. For years, BPA was widely used in certain plastics and food container linings. Its popularity came from its versatility: strong, durable, convenient. But researchers eventually discovered something troubling. BPA can interact with hormone systems. Hormones function like biological text messages, tiny signals carrying instructions throughout the body. When chemicals interfere with those signals, confusion can occur. Imagine receiving hundreds of contradictory messages every day. Eventually, communication breaks down. The same principle can apply inside the body, because BPA may mimic or interfere with natural hormonal activity. And hormones influence almost everything: metabolism, reproduction, growth, mood, energy regulation, immune function. The story becomes even larger when we include another group of chemicals called phthalates. Phthalates are commonly used to increase flexibility in plastics and are found in a variety of consumer products. Food packaging, personal care products, cosmetics, household materials. Many people encounter them without realizing it. Like BPA, Phthalates have attracted attention because of their ability to interact with hormonal systems. And this brings us to an important concept: endocrine disruptors. The endocrine system is the body's hormone network. It acts like an internal communication infrastructure. Hormones tell organs what to do, when to do it, and how intensely to respond. An endocrine disruptor is a substance capable of interfering with these messages. Sometimes it mimics a hormone, sometimes it blocks one, sometimes it changes how signals are processed. The result can be biological confusion. And because hormones influence inflammation, metabolism, sleep, and immune function, the effects can ripple throughout the body. Now let's step back and imagine a typical day. Not a factory worker, not someone handling industrial chemicals, just an ordinary American. The alarm rings, a quick shower, shampoo, soap, personal care products. Breakfast arrives in plastic packaging. Coffee comes from a disposable cup with a coated interior. Lunch is stored in a plastic container. The afternoon includes bottled water, receipts from stores, time spent inside climate-controlled buildings, exposure to household cleaners, synthetic fragrances, furniture, carpets, electronics, food packaging. Then dinner. More packaging, more containers, more environmental exposure. None of these experiences seem remarkable. That is precisely why they matter, because modern exposure is often invisible, not dramatic, not obvious, just constant. The goal is not fear. The goal is awareness, because awareness creates opportunity. And fortunately, reducing toxic burden does not require moving into a forest or abandoning modern life. Small changes can make a meaningful difference. Let's start with the first. Improve water quality whenever possible. Water is one of the most frequent exposures in daily life. A high-quality water filtration system can reduce exposure to certain contaminants. Not all filters are equal, but thoughtful filtration may help lower the burden from various environmental compounds. The second change involves food storage. Whenever practical, consider reducing the use of plastic containers for hot foods. Heat can increase the migration of certain compounds from packaging materials. Glass containers often provide a simple alternative, especially for reheating meals. The third change involves indoor air and household products. Many people spend most of their lives indoors. Open windows when conditions allow. Improve ventilation. Be selective with heavily scented products. Sometimes less fragrance means less unnecessary chemical exposure. None of these changes will create a perfect environment. Perfection does not exist, but reducing exposure is often about margins. Small improvements, repeated consistently. The same principle we have seen throughout this entire series. Inflammation rarely comes from a single event. It is usually the accumulation of countless small signals. Signals from food, signals from stress, signals from poor sleep, signals from the environment. Each signal may seem insignificant alone, but together they shape the biological reality of the body. Let me ask you something. Which environmental exposure concerns you the most? Plastic packaging? Water quality? Household chemicals? Air pollution? Share your thoughts in the comments. Many people are surprised to learn how widespread these exposures have become. Yet after hearing all of this, a natural question emerges. If processed food increases inflammation, if stress increases inflammation, if poor sleep increases inflammation, if environmental toxins increase inflammation, can anything actively push back? Can the body generate its own anti-inflammatory medicine? The answer is yes, and it may be far more powerful than most people realize, because hidden inside every muscle fiber is a biological pharmacy, one that activates every time you move. Which brings us to the next chapter. Can exercise save us from all of this? Let's find out. Part 9. The movement medicine. Throughout this journey, we have uncovered many of the hidden forces driving chronic inflammation. We explored processed food. We examined blood sugar spikes. We followed stress hormones through the body. We discovered the importance of sleep. We investigated environmental toxins. At times, it may feel overwhelming, as if modern life itself has become an obstacle course filled with inflammatory triggers. But what if your body already possesses one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory medicines ever discovered? What if that medicine requires no prescription, no expensive equipment, no special membership, no advanced technology? What if it begins working the moment you stand up and move? Because movement is far more than calorie burning. Movement is biology. Movement is communication. Movement is medicine, and perhaps the greatest irony of modern life is that many of us have engineered movement out of existence. A typical day now looks very different from the way humans lived for most of history. We wake up, sit during breakfast, sit in the car, sit at work, sit during lunch, sit during meetings, sit during the commute home, sit during dinner, sit while watching television, then lie down to sleep, hour after hour, day after day, year after year. This reality gave rise to a phrase that has become famous in health circles. Sitting is the new smoking. Now, to be clear, sitting is not literally equivalent to smoking, but the phrase highlights an important truth. Extended sedentary behavior is associated with numerous health risks. The human body evolved to move. Muscles were designed to contract. Joints were designed to bend. The cardiovascular system was designed to circulate blood through active tissues. When movement disappears, biology begins changing. Blood sugar regulation becomes less efficient. Insulin sensitivity declines. Circulation slows. Muscle mass decreases. Inflammatory activity can increase. The body starts receiving a dangerous message. The message is simple: we are not moving, and the body responds accordingly. Yet many people recognize this problem and attempt to solve it in a surprising way. They become what researchers sometimes call weekend warriors. Perhaps this sounds familiar. 5 days of sitting, minimal activity, long work hours. Then suddenly, Saturday arrives. A massive workout, a long run, an intense cycling session, several hours of sports. The motivation is admirable, but the body often struggles with this pattern. Imagine leaving a car parked in a garage for months, then immediately driving it across the country at maximum speed. The sudden demand creates stress. Something similar can occur in the human body. Exercise is beneficial, but large bursts of activity cannot fully compensate for prolonged inactivity. The body thrives on consistency, regular movement, daily movement, frequent movement, not simply heroic efforts once or twice a week. At the same time, there is another mistake that often appears at the opposite extreme: overtraining. Modern fitness culture frequently celebrates intensity: harder, longer, more. Push through the pain. Never miss a workout, no excuses. But biology cares about recovery just as much as effort. Every workout creates stress. That stress is not necessarily harmful. In fact, it can be beneficial. Scientists call this hormesis, a small challenge that stimulates adaptation. The problem emerges when recovery never catches up, when intense training becomes chronic, when sleep is insufficient, when nutrition is inadequate, when stress is already elevated. Under those conditions, exercise itself can become another source of inflammatory burden. Performance declines, fatigue accumulates, injuries become more common, mood deteriorates, motivation disappears. The body begins signaling that it needs restoration. This brings us to one of the most fascinating discoveries in exercise science. For decades, muscles were viewed primarily as mechanical structures. They moved bones, generated force, burned calories. But researchers eventually discovered something remarkable. Muscles function as endocrine organs. In other words, muscles release signaling molecules. Among the most important are compounds called myokines. Think of myokines as biochemical messages. Every time muscles contract, they send signals throughout the body. These signals influence metabolism, immune function, brain health, and inflammation. In many ways, muscles act like a pharmacy that manufactures medicine while you move. Some myokines appear to help regulate inflammatory processes. Others improve insulin sensitivity. Others support communication between organs. This means exercise is not merely burning energy. It is generating information, beneficial biological information. The question then becomes, what type of movement provides the greatest anti-inflammatory benefits? One answer receiving enormous attention in longevity research is something called Zone 2 cardio. Zone 2 refers to a moderate level of aerobic exercise. Not easy, but not exhausting. A pace where conversation remains possible. You can speak in complete sentences, but singing would feel difficult. Examples include brisk walking, cycling, jogging, swimming, rowing, hiking. At this intensity, the body becomes highly efficient at using fat for fuel. Mitochondria improve. Cardiovascular fitness increases. Metabolic flexibility improves. Recovery demands remain manageable. Many longevity experts consider Zone 2 one of the most powerful tools available for long-term health, not because it is extreme, but because it is sustainable. And sustainability is often where transformation occurs. Yet even Zone 2 does not solve another major problem. Many people simply spend too much time sitting, even those who exercise regularly. A person might complete a morning workout and then remain seated for the next 10 hours. This is where another concept becomes valuable. Exercise snacks. No, not food. Movement. Tiny bursts of movement spread throughout the day. Imagine standing up every hour, walking for 5 minutes, climbing a few flights of stairs, performing bodyweight squats, stretching, marching in place, a short burst, then returning to work. These brief sessions may seem insignificant, but biology responds strongly to frequency. Each movement break improves circulation, activates muscles, encourages glucose uptake, interrupts prolonged sedentary behavior, and perhaps most importantly, reminds the body that movement is still part of daily life. Let me ask you something. How many hours do you spend sitting each day? And what is your favorite form of exercise? Walking? Running? Cycling? Strength training? Share your answer in the comments. You may inspire someone else to begin moving more consistently. So what would a simple anti-inflammatory movement plan look like? Fortunately, it does not need to be complicated. Aim for daily movement. Walk whenever possible. Prioritize consistency over intensity. Include several sessions of Zone 2 cardio each week. Perform strength training regularly to preserve muscle mass. Take movement breaks throughout the day. Respect recovery. Protect sleep. Listen to your body's signals. Most importantly, remember that the goal is not punishment. The goal is communication. Every step sends a message. Every walk sends a message. Every workout sends a message. The message is, we are alive. We are adaptable, we are strong, and we are preparing for the future. By now, we have examined many of the forces that feed the inflammatory fire: food, stress, sleep, environmental toxins, movement. But another question naturally emerges. What if we could actually measure the fire itself? What if we could look beneath the surface and see signs of inflammation long before disease appears? What if we could track the biological signals that predict future health? Because the future of medicine may not be about waiting for illness. It may be about identifying risk years before symptoms arrive. And that takes us directly into the next chapter, the longevity matrix. The science of measuring the hidden fire before it becomes impossible to ignore. Part 10, the longevity matrix. Imagine two people walking into a doctor's office. Both feel healthy, both have normal energy, both have no obvious symptoms, both are told the same thing. You look fine. One of them will remain healthy for decades. The other will suffer a heart attack within a few years. How is that possible? Because disease often begins long before symptoms appear, long before pain, long before diagnosis, long before the body sends a warning signal loud enough to notice. This realization is fueling a major shift in modern medicine, a shift from reacting to disease to detecting risk before disease develops. And nowhere is this shift more visible than in the growing field of longevity medicine. To understand this revolution, we first need to understand the difference between what some experts call Medicine 2.0 and Medicine 3.0. Medicine 2.0 is the system most people know. You develop symptoms, you visit a doctor, tests are ordered, a diagnosis is made, treatment begins. This model has saved countless lives: emergency medicine, trauma care, infectious disease treatment, surgical advances. These achievements are extraordinary, but Medicine 2.0 often focuses on treating problems after they become visible, after damage has already accumulated, after disease has already progressed. Medicine 3.0 takes a different approach. Instead of asking, "What disease do you have?" it asks, "What disease are you moving toward?" Instead of waiting for symptoms, it looks for signals, patterns, trends, early warning signs, tiny biological clues that reveal what may happen years from now. The goal is prevention. The goal is optimization. The goal is extending both lifespan and health span. Health span means the number of years spent healthy, active, and independent, not merely alive. This philosophy has become closely associated with physicians and longevity researchers such as Peter Attia. Over the last decade, Attia has helped popularize the idea that many chronic diseases are not sudden events. They are long processes that can often be detected years before diagnosis. Think about a heart attack. Most people imagine it appearing out of nowhere. One day, everything seems fine. The next day, disaster strikes. But the biological processes behind cardiovascular disease often develop over decades. The same can be true for metabolic disease, neurodegeneration, and many other chronic conditions. The challenge is learning how to identify risk early enough to act. This brings us to one of the most important biomarkers in cardiovascular health, ApoB. Most people have heard of cholesterol. Many know about LDL cholesterol, often called bad cholesterol, but ApoB may provide a more precise picture of risk. Why? Because ApoB reflects the number of potentially atherogenic particles circulating in the bloodstream. Imagine two highways. Both contain the same total amount of cargo. One highway uses a few large trucks. The other uses thousands of small trucks. Which highway experiences more traffic? Usually the one with more vehicles. Similarly, the number of particles may matter greatly when assessing cardiovascular risk. ApoB helps estimate that particle burden. Higher levels may indicate a greater opportunity for particles to interact with blood vessel walls. And as we learned earlier in this series, inflammation and particle accumulation often work together. One supplies the fuel, the other supplies the spark. Another critical marker is fasting insulin. Most people know about blood glucose. Far fewer know about fasting insulin. Yet, fasting insulin may provide an early glimpse into metabolic health. Imagine two people with identical blood sugar levels. One requires very little insulin to maintain that level. The other requires much more. Which metabolism appears healthier? Generally, the one requiring less insulin. Elevated fasting insulin may suggest that the body is working harder to maintain glucose control, sometimes years before blood sugar becomes abnormal. In many ways, fasting insulin can act like an early warning signal, a whisper before the alarm sounds. Another fascinating biomarker is homocysteine. Homocysteine is an amino acid naturally produced during metabolism. In healthy conditions, the body efficiently recycles it, but elevated levels may be associated with cardiovascular and neurological concerns. Researchers continue investigating its role, but many longevity-focused clinicians view homocysteine as an important piece of the puzzle. Not because it predicts everything, but because health is rarely determined by a single number. Health emerges from patterns, multiple signals viewed together, and perhaps no marker fits our inflammation theme more perfectly than hsCRP. High-sensitivity C-reactive protein. You may remember this marker from earlier chapters. It is one of the most widely used indicators of systemic inflammation. Think of hsCRP as smoke. It does not necessarily reveal the exact location of the fire, but it tells you something is burning. Generally speaking, lower levels suggest lower inflammatory burden. Higher levels may indicate increased inflammatory activity. It is not a perfect marker, no biomarker is, but it provides valuable information, especially when viewed alongside other measurements. Now we arrive at one of the newer and more intriguing developments in longevity science, glycan age. Unlike traditional biomarkers, glycan age attempts to estimate aspects of biological aging through the analysis of glycans. Glycans are complex sugar structures attached to proteins throughout the body. Researchers have discovered that glycan patterns can change with age, lifestyle, and inflammatory status. In simple terms, glycan age seeks to answer an interesting question. How old does your biology appear? Not your driver's license, not your birth certificate, your biology. Two people may share the same chronological age while possessing very different biological ages. One may be aging more slowly, the other more rapidly. This idea continues attracting attention because it shifts the conversation away from years lived and toward physiological resilience. But here is where many people become overwhelmed. They receive a laboratory report filled with numbers, abbreviations, reference ranges, technical language, and they have no idea what any of it means. The first thing to remember is that laboratory results should never be interpreted in isolation. Context matters. Medical history matters. Individual circumstances matter. A single result rarely tells the entire story. Instead, think of biomarkers as pieces of a larger map. ApoB, fasting insulin, homocysteine, hsCRP, glucose, triglycerides, blood pressure, body composition, sleep quality, fitness levels. Together, they create a more complete picture. The goal is not obsession. The goal is awareness. Because awareness creates opportunity. Have you ever looked at your own blood test results and felt completely confused? Have you ever noticed a marker that concerned you? Share your experience in the comments. Many people discover that understanding their numbers becomes the first step toward taking greater control of their health. And yet, after all this discussion about biomarkers, another question naturally appears. What if you know every number? What if you track every metric? What if you monitor every possible indicator? Will measurement alone improve your health? Will data alone extinguish the fire? Of course not. A thermometer can measure a fever, but it cannot cure one. And that brings us to the next chapter. Because once you understand the fire, and once you learn how to measure it, the next challenge is learning how to put it out. The Anti-Inflammatory Toolkit, the practical strategies people are using right now to cool the flames and help the body heal. Part 11, the Anti-Inflammatory Toolkit. For 10 chapters, we have followed the hidden fire wherever it appeared. We found it in the bloodstream, we found it in the gut, we found it in processed food, in blood sugar spikes, in chronic stress, in sleep deprivation, in environmental toxins. We discovered how inflammation quietly influences almost every major system in the body. Now we arrive at an important question. What can we actually do about it? Not in theory, not in a laboratory, not someday in the future. What practical tools exist right now? What strategies can help calm the fire and support recovery? This chapter is not about perfection. It is about building a toolbox, a collection of evidence-informed practices that may help create an environment where healing becomes easier. Let's begin with one of the most talked about trends in modern biohacking. Cold plunge. Imagine stepping into water so cold that every instinct tells you to get out immediately. Your breathing accelerates, your heart rate rises, your body perceives a challenge. At first glance, this sounds like stress, and it is. But it is a very specific kind of stress, a short, controlled, intentional stress. Remember the concept of hormesis from our movement chapter. Small challenges can stimulate adaptation. Cold exposure appears to work through a similar principle. When the body encounters cold, numerous physiological responses activate. Blood vessels constrict, stress response pathways engage, the nervous system becomes highly alert. Then, after the exposure ends, the body begins recovering. Some researchers believe that repeated cold exposure may influence inflammation, resilience, mood, and metabolic function. The science is still evolving, and not every claim circulating online is supported by strong evidence. But one thing is clear, humans evolved in environments where temperature varied dramatically. Modern life has removed many of those challenges. Cold exposure may represent one way of reintroducing a controlled dose of environmental stress. Now let's move from cold to heat. If cold plunge has become the darling of biohacking culture, sauna may be its oldest cousin. For thousands of years, humans have used heat for relaxation and recovery. Today, scientists are uncovering fascinating biological mechanisms that may help explain why. When body temperature rises during sauna exposure, the body activates protective responses. One of the most important involves a family of molecules called heat shock proteins. Think of heat shock proteins as maintenance workers. Their job is to help protect proteins from damage, repair cellular structures, assist with quality control, and support healthy cellular function. Every day, proteins throughout the body experience wear and tear. Heat shock proteins help identify problems and support repair processes. In many ways, they are part of the body's internal housekeeping system. This is one reason researchers have become increasingly interested in the relationship between heat exposure, longevity, and resilience. Again, sauna is not magic, but it may be another useful tool within a larger strategy. Interestingly, both cold and heat appear to influence a structure that may be one of the most important regulators of inflammation in the human body: the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is sometimes called the wandering nerve because it travels throughout much of the body. It connects the brain to major organs, the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, and many other tissues. Think of it as a communication highway, a biological internet cable connecting multiple systems. One of its most fascinating functions involves helping regulate the balance between stress and recovery. When vagal activity is strong, the body often shifts toward a calmer state. Heart rate slows, digestion improves, recovery becomes easier. Inflammatory activity may become better regulated. Some scientists even describe this as part of an anti-inflammatory reflex, the body's ability to communicate with itself and maintain balance. The question then becomes, can we intentionally stimulate the vagus nerve? Potentially, yes. And one of the simplest methods involves something we do thousands of times every day: breathing. Breathwork has existed for centuries in various cultures. Today, modern science is helping explain why it may be so powerful. Breathing is unique because it operates both automatically and voluntarily. You do not need to think about it, yet you can consciously change it whenever you choose. This gives us a direct pathway into the nervous system. Slow, controlled breathing may encourage greater parasympathetic activity, the branch of the nervous system associated with rest and recovery. When breathing slows, the body often receives a message. The threat has passed. The emergency is over. You are safe. This message may influence heart rate variability, stress levels, and inflammatory regulation. Something as simple as 5 minutes of intentional breathing can sometimes create noticeable changes in how a person feels. But perhaps the most surprising anti-inflammatory trend of recent years is grounding, also called earthing. The basic idea is simple. Humans evolved in direct contact with the earth, bare feet on soil, grass, sand, stone. Modern life has dramatically reduced that contact. Shoes, concrete, buildings, synthetic surfaces. Grounding advocates suggest that reconnecting with natural surfaces may provide biological benefits through electrical interactions with the earth. The science remains debated. Some findings are intriguing. Others require further investigation. What is less controversial is the value of spending time outdoors, walking in nature, reducing stress, increasing movement, receiving natural light. These benefits alone can positively influence health. Now let's turn our attention to food once again. Not the foods that drive inflammation, the foods that may help counter it. One of the most important groups of compounds is polyphenols. Polyphenols are naturally occurring plant compounds found in foods such as berries, olives, tea, dark chocolate, herbs, and colorful vegetables. Plants produce these compounds as protective molecules. When humans consume polyphenol-rich foods, interesting biological interactions occur. Many polyphenols appear to support antioxidant defenses and influence cellular signaling pathways. This is one reason diets rich in colorful plant foods consistently appear in discussions about longevity. Another compound that has received enormous attention is curcumin. Curcumin is the primary active compound found in turmeric. For centuries, turmeric has been used in traditional systems of medicine. Modern researchers have investigated curcumin for its potential effects on inflammation and oxidative stress. While absorption can be challenging and research continues evolving, curcumin remains one of the most widely studied plant compounds in the world. Then there is sulforaphane, a compound produced from cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli sprouts. Sulforaphane has attracted scientific interest because of its ability to influence pathways involved in cellular defense. One pathway frequently discussed is NRF2. Think of NRF2 as a master switch that helps activate the body's own protective systems. Rather than supplying antioxidants directly, compounds like sulforaphane may encourage the body to strengthen its internal defenses. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of this entire chapter. The goal is not to fight biology. The goal is to support it. The body already possesses extraordinary repair systems, extraordinary defense systems, extraordinary recovery systems. Our role is to create conditions where those systems can function effectively. Fortunately, this does not require spending thousands of dollars on advanced biohacking equipment. Many of the most effective interventions are remarkably affordable. Walking, breathing exercises, improved sleep, morning sunlight, strength training, vegetable-rich meals, stress reduction, regular movement, hydration, social connection, nature exposure. These are not glamorous. They rarely go viral, but they remain some of the most powerful health tools available. Let me ask you something. If you could choose only one habit to improve starting tomorrow, what would it be? Better sleep? More walking? Healthier food? Stress management? Share your answer in the comments, because sometimes transformation begins with a single decision. And now, after 11 chapters, we arrive at the final question. The question many people have been wondering from the very beginning. If chronic inflammation has been building for years, if the fire has been burning quietly beneath the surface, if you start making changes today, how long will it take before the body begins to respond? Days, weeks, months, years? The answer may be more encouraging than you think. Because the immune system is not a prison sentence. It is a living, adaptable network. And in our final chapter, we will explore how quickly that network can begin changing when given the right signals. The 21-Day Reset. Part 12. The 21-Day Reset. We have reached the final chapter of our journey. For 11 episodes, we followed a hidden fire through the human body. We watched it move through the bloodstream. We saw it damage arteries. We saw it influence the brain. We discovered its connection to blood sugar, stress, sleep, toxins, and aging. And now a question remains. What do we do with all of this information? Knowledge alone does not change biology. Action does. The good news is that chronic inflammation is not something that switches on overnight. And because it develops gradually, it can often begin improving gradually as well. You do not need a perfect diet. You do not need expensive supplements. You do not need a biohacking laboratory in your garage. You simply need to start sending different signals to your body. This final chapter is a practical blueprint, a 21-day reset, not a miracle, not a detox, not a quick fix, a reset, a chance to begin moving in a new direction. Let's start with week 1. Week 1, remove the fuel. Imagine a campfire. If you stop adding wood, the flames begin shrinking. The same principle applies to inflammation. Before we add special strategies, we first need to remove some of the fuel. Your mission during week 1 is simple. Reduce the major inflammatory inputs. The first target is ultra-processed food. Foods designed to survive months on shelves. Foods loaded with refined ingredients. Foods your great-grandparents would barely recognize. This does not mean perfection. It means awareness. When possible, replace packaged foods with real foods. Foods that once grew. Foods that once lived. Foods that contain ingredients you can actually pronounce. The second target is excess sugar. Remember what we learned in the glucose chapter. Every major glucose spike creates stress. Repeated spikes create repeated stress. Repeated stress contributes to inflammation. You do not need to eliminate every gram of sugar. Instead, focus on reducing the biggest sources. Sugary drinks, desserts, candy, sweetened coffee beverages. Many people notice improvements in energy within days. The third target is protein. Protein is not just for athletes. Protein supports muscle maintenance, recovery, hormone production, metabolic health. Many adults consume less protein than they realize. Aim to include quality protein at each meal. Eggs, fish, Greek yogurt, lean meat, legumes, tofu. Protein helps stabilize hunger and blood sugar. The fourth target is fiber. Fiber is one of the greatest gifts you can give your microbiome. Remember the gut command center. Your beneficial microbes need fuel too. Vegetables, beans, fruit, oats, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. These foods help support a healthier intestinal environment. At the end of week 1, do not ask, have I become healthy? Ask instead, have I started removing fuel from the fire? If the answer is yes, you are already moving forward. Now we enter week 2. Week 2, restore the biological clock. Many people focus entirely on food, but biology runs on timing. Your body contains an internal clock system. Every organ follows rhythms. Hormones follow rhythms. Metabolism follows rhythms. Inflammation follows rhythms. Modern life often disrupts these rhythms. Artificial light, late-night screens, irregular sleep schedules, indoor living. This week focuses on restoring biological timing. The first habit is morning light. Within the first hour after waking, spend time outside whenever possible. Even a short walk can help. Natural light sends powerful signals to the brain. It helps regulate circadian rhythms. It helps coordinate hormones. It helps prepare the body for better sleep later that night. The second habit is walking after meals. Nothing extreme, just movement. Even 10 to 15 minutes can help support glucose control. Remember how blood sugar and inflammation interact. A simple walk can become a surprisingly powerful tool. The third habit is protecting sleep. Aim to be asleep before 11 o'clock whenever possible. The exact time matters less than consistency. Your body loves routine. Regular sleep schedules help support melatonin production, deep sleep, recovery, hormonal balance, inflammation control. By the end of week 2, many people begin noticing something interesting. Their energy feels different, not necessarily higher every moment, more stable, more predictable. The body is beginning to remember its natural rhythm. Now we move to week 3. Week 3, optimize anti-inflammatory signals. The first 2 weeks focused on removing problems. Week 3 focuses on strengthening solutions. The first strategy is Zone 2 cardio. Remember our movement medicine chapter. Moderate exercise, sustainable exercise, the kind of activity you can maintain for years, not days. Aim for several sessions each week, walking briskly, cycling, swimming, jogging. The goal is consistency. The second strategy is breath work, just a few minutes each day. Slow breathing, controlled breathing, intentional breathing. A signal to the nervous system that danger has passed, a signal that recovery can begin, a signal that the body can shift away from chronic stress. The third strategy is cold exposure. This does not require an expensive cold plunge tub. Even a brief cool shower may provide a useful challenge. The goal is not suffering. The goal is adaptation, a small stressor that teaches the body resilience. The fourth strategy is tracking energy. Most people track weight. Few people track energy, yet energy may be one of the most valuable biomarkers available. Ask yourself each day, how do I feel when I wake up? How focused am I? How is my mood? How is my recovery? How is my sleep? Patterns begin emerging. The body starts revealing its story. And then something remarkable often happens. People realize they are no longer chasing health, they are experiencing it. Not perfection, progress. Not a transformation into a different person, a return to the person they were designed to be. Which brings us to the final lesson of this entire series: immune plasticity. This may be one of the most hopeful concepts in modern health science. Many people believe their current condition is permanent. If they feel tired today, they assume they will always feel tired. If they struggle with inflammation today, they assume nothing can change. But biology tells a different story. The immune system is not fixed. It is adaptive, responsive, dynamic. Every meal sends information. Every night of sleep sends information. Every workout sends information. Every breath sends information. Every choice teaches the immune system something. For years, chronic inflammation may have been receiving one message: danger, 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 danger. But over the last 21 days, you have begun sending a different message: safety, recovery, repair, balance. And the body listens. Perhaps not instantly, perhaps not dramatically, but continuously, quietly, day after day, cell by cell. The same fire that may have been burning silently for years can begin cooling. The same immune system that seemed trapped can begin adapting. The same body that felt exhausted can begin recovering. That is the power of immune plasticity. Not because the body is weak, because the body is remarkably intelligent. And because healing is often not about forcing change, it is about creating conditions where change becomes possible. Before we finish, I want to thank you for joining me through this entire series. If you found value in this podcast, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss future episodes. And I would love to hear from you. Which lesson impacted you the most? Which habit are you going to start first? Leave a comment below and share your experience. You may help someone else begin their own journey. And if you know someone struggling with fatigue, poor sleep, brain fog, weight gain, chronic stress, or unexplained health issues, share this podcast with them. Sometimes a single piece of information can change the direction of a life. Thank you for listening. Take care of your body, respect your biology, and remember this: the goal is not merely to live longer. The goal is to live better, with more energy, more clarity, more strength, and more years fully alive. I will see you in the next journey.